In this day and age, with everybody being so tied to their electronic devices, living in the cloud, being bombarded by all kinds of information and ads and pop-ups, I think sometimes something's lost. It's nice to be able to turn all that off and sit down with a book. You get that nice feedback of turning the pages, and the information's always there. Other than life itself, nothing's going to distract you from a book. I'll admit that I'm guilty of not being a big reader myself, but being the person that I am, I take my information in a wealth of forms, especially when it comes to classic home video games from 1989 to 1990. Church here, and welcome to the Game Grinder. Today it is my privilege to be reviewing classic home video games 1989 to 1990. This was written by Weiss and published by McFarland, and as the subtitle reads, this is a complete guide to Sega Genesis, Neo Geo, and TurboGrafx-16 games. This book is the third in a series, with the previous one covering video games from 1985 to 1998, including the NES, Sega Master System, and the Atari 7800, and the first book in the series covering games from 72 to 84, hitting on the first and second generations of video games, including the Atari, ColecoVision, Intellivision, Odyssey, and even the Vectrex. Weiss has also written a few other gaming and culture-related books. So on to the book itself then. Not to keep repeating myself, but as the title reads, this book covers classic home video games from 1989 to 1990, and that's the consoles and games released in those years, which, as the subtitle happens to read, a complete guide to Sega Genesis, Neo Geo, and TurboGrafx-16 games. So the main bulk of the book itself covers those three systems and all their officially licensed games. So the book's pretty much laid out exactly as listed, with three major sections, each covering the three systems mentioned, starting with a nice introduction to the system covering game system specs, reception, price, and sometimes comparisons to the other competing systems. After about a page or so of description of the system, then we go into the main bulk of the book. Each section about the game obviously starts with the title, but then it also provides great information like publisher, developer, genre, how many players, and what year the game was released. Most game descriptions are relatively brief with a paragraph or two, but Brett gives a pretty good description of the game's gameplay, its style, some notable features, and will also point out some of the quirks of the game. There's not a lot of bias towards games, but sometimes if it's particularly bad or particularly good, it might get a little extra mention. But I will say it's pretty nice to be able to get a game description without a large opinion behind it. So not only do we get a great description of the three consoles, descriptions of all the licensed games that were released, one huge bonus with this book is in the years of 1989 and 90, there were more systems than just the Genesis, Neo Geo, and TurboGrafx released. And fortunately for us, that information is contained. In the back of the book is a bunch of appendices covering all the additional systems that were released, like the Neo Geo CD, Sega CD, Sega 32X, TurboGrafx CD, Atari Lynx, and the Nintendo Game Boy. And with the main focus of the book being the Genesis, Neo Geo, and TurboGrafx, these games don't get much of a description, usually a quick blurb just about the style of game. And though it would be great to have a lot more information, I can't complain with these little extra sections added in. So it's worth mentioning that since this book is mostly a compendium or an index of game descriptions, there's not going to be a whole lot of pictures or screenshots of the game, which in one way is kind of a drag, but at the same time it makes a lot of sense. This is already a 336-page book, and if you start throwing in pictures for every single game, you probably double in the size, and really that's unrealistic, and I like it how it's laid out. I will say though, for each console, there's a picture, so at least you know what it looks like, and usually every other page of the book or so will have cover art for one of the adjacent game descriptions. And then lastly, the book itself. This is a really high quality made book. The covers look great, they're solid, and the pages are nice and rigid like any other high quality book. It has some other nice additions like a glossary and an index in the back, which can help you quickly track down pages or answer questions you might have about some of the jargon. And much like any other standard book, it has your table of contents, and acknowledgements, a pretty nice foreword, and a good preface by Weiss. So all in all, I gotta say this is a pretty nice book to have. It's great to just be able to pull something off the shelf when you want to look up some information, and there's been a lot of times already that I've been making use of the book, especially with me getting more into trying to collect and expand my Sega Genesis collection, being able to remind myself of some of the games that I used to play or games to, look out for, sort of thing. A lot of times with books like this, I'll leave them out on a coffee table when I have friends come over, and there's already been a few times where my friends have picked it up and, while we're just hanging out and having conversations, they're flipping through the book and being like, oh, I remember that game, or what about this game? Is this in there? And I think that's really cool, and it's a really nice thing to just be able to have that sort of resource just, at arm's reach at any time. And as far as how everything's presented, I gotta say this is a really nice book. Presented really well, written really well, and I really gotta give a lot of props to Brett Weiss for doing such a great job, and his passion for what he does definitely shows through. So I'd say if you get the opportunity to check out this book, of course I'll have links in the description where you can find his books online, or maybe even get some extra information about some of his other books. I would definitely encourage you to check it out. And I gotta say that was really nice to be able to get a copy of Brett's book to check it out. Lately I've been getting a lot more into picking up old game magazines and just some other, game media like that to add to my collection, and this is a really great resource to have in a collection, especially, it's all the information you can need right on your shelf, and for me, having things on my shelves is really what I like, and I think it's pretty great. Thanks for checking out my review of classic home video games 1989 to 1990. What were your thoughts on the book? Let me know in the comments below. If you liked what you've seen or heard, please give the video a like, a share, and subscribe to see future videos. I'm on Twitter and Facebook as well, and I post a lot of other great game-related content there, and of course links are in the description. Until next time on the Game Grinder.